The aviation industry just got a jolt that no one saw coming. Korean Air, one of Asia's most prestigious carriers, has just publicly rejected China's COMAC C919, a move that didn't just raise eyebrows, it detonated alarm bells across Beijing's aerospace agenda. And they didn't whisper it behind closed doors. They announced it publicly, loudly, and with clinical precision. They praised COMAC's ambition and then followed it up with a brutal gut punch. We're not buying it. Instead, Korean Air made something crystal clear. They're sticking with Boeing and Airbus, even as Boeing faces internal chaos and quality scandals. Why? Because reputation matters more than innovation. And in aviation, one crack in trust is more dangerous than a cracked fuselage. If this shocks you as much as it shocked the aviation world, smash that like button, subscribe for more jaw-dropping revelations, and buckle up, because we're just getting started. This wasn't an attack, it was a strategic message, a signal to every airline, regulator, and financier in the world. COMAC may be on the radar, but it hasn't entered the flight path of serious international carriers. Meanwhile, COMAC's been in overdrive. It's not just building jets, it's building an image. They've rolled out the ARJ21 and the C919 at nearly every major global airshow: Zhuhai, Singapore, Paris, Dubai. Flashy displays, strong specs, big promises. But despite the spectacle, the orders aren't pouring in. Yes, COMAC has landed some deals. Brunei's Galipair signed on. Support centers were set up in Singapore and Hong Kong. Chinese media calls it a global breakthrough. But beneath the headlines, the reality is far more turbulent. Major carriers in the West aren't buying. Middle Eastern giants aren't biting. And top-tier airlines in Asia, like Korean Air, are now publicly stepping back. Because no matter how loud the drumbeat, trust isn't earned through press releases. So where's COMAC looking? Closer to home. Southeast Asia has become the testing ground, the proving zone. Vietnam's VIA is engaged in tech transfer talks. Indonesia's Transnusa actually took delivery of the C919, a symbolic milestone that Beijing turned into a media blitz. Next in line, Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar. China is bundling jets with infrastructure, loans, and diplomatic sweeteners, using state-led aviation diplomacy to carve out a regional stronghold. And yet, adoption remains cautious. The orders are small, the routes are limited, and the skepticism is real. These countries may accept the planes, but they haven't fully embraced the brand. Why? Because even if the C919 performs well on paper, airlines don't fly paper, they fly confidence. And COMAC still hasn't crossed that invisible line into international trust. Every time a C919 takes off, it's watched. Not just for altitude or fuel burn, but for evidence. Evidence that it can replace an A320, that it can outlast a 737 MAX, that it won't require a service overhaul every 500 hours. But until COMAC gets there, the industry wall remains up, high, reinforced, and virtually impenetrable. This is an industry built on redundancy, routine, and reliability. Every aircraft purchase is a 20-year commitment. Every certification takes a decade. And no matter how fast China moves, it can't fast-track trust. That's the real challenge. Because COMAC isn't just fighting Boeing and Airbus, it's fighting history. And that history showed up with a vengeance when Korean Air said no. Not because the plane couldn't fly, but because it couldn't cross borders. What grounded COMAC wasn't performance, it was paperwork. Because in global aviation, trust wears a uniform, and it comes stamped on a certificate. COMAC's wings aren't clipped by design, they're clipped by certification. And in the world of global aviation, certification isn't a rubber stamp, it's a passport. Right now, the C919 only holds one, the Chinese CAAC seal of approval. It may be enough for domestic flights within China, but internationally, it's as good as expired. Without FAA approval from the United States or EASA certification from Europe, the C919 might as well be flying in a cage. No landings in New York, no routes to Frankfurt, no intercontinental code share with any global alliance. It's a jet built for the skies, but locked into regional routes. And here's the twist. Experts say ESA certification is unlikely before 2030. FAA approval? Even further out, if ever. Why? Because trust in a jet goes beyond specs. It involves politics, testing transparency, and decades of partnership. And right now, COMAC doesn't check any of those boxes. Meanwhile, Boeing and Airbus aren't waiting. They're using this multi-year window to evolve, upgrade, and entrench. More fuel-efficient variants, stronger after-sales support, expanded maintenance networks. While COMAC is lobbying for certifications, Airbus and Boeing are sealing long-term fleet deals with the very airlines China wants to woo. Without the right stamps in its passport, the C919 remains a tourist in the global market. Not a citizen, but it gets worse. Because even the jets that are flying, like the ARJ21, are running on borrowed time and borrowed range. The ARJ21 is limited to short-haul routes, mostly within Asia. It was designed to cover the regional gap in China's own network, but globally, it's too small, too limited, too isolated. And even the C919, which aims to compete with the A320neo and 737 MAX, is boxed in by operational realities. It lacks the intercontinental flexibility that major airlines demand. It can't be rerouted from Kuala Lumpur to London or slotted seamlessly into a code-share network with a North American partner. And for leasing firms, that's a red flag. Planes that can't be shuffled across continents lose value fast. Liquidity is everything. If a plane doesn't work on one route, it must work on another. That's what makes Airbus and Boeing so valuable. They fit into every ecosystem. The C919 doesn't, not yet. And leasing firms know it. They're staying away, which means airlines can't lease COMAC jets the way they do Boeing's or Airbus's. That reduces flexibility. And in this industry, lack of flexibility is a death sentence. But let's pull back, because if you think COMAC's challenge is just technical or operational, think again. This is a battle of ecosystems, and Boeing and Airbus are running empires. The 737 MAX and A320neo aren't just aircraft. They're fully integrated platforms, certified globally, supported everywhere, and resold with ease. A pilot trained in Toronto can fly them in Tokyo. A parts supplier in Germany can fix a problem in São Paulo. Every piece fits, every piece scales. And even when Boeing faltered with the MAX, airlines didn't flee, they waited. Even when Airbus faced massive delivery delays, trust didn't collapse, it was managed. Because that's what happens when you own the sky through relationships, not just rivets. COMAC has none of that. It's trying to build an empire in a decade that took others a century. And while it's made strides, it's not even close to being in the same flight level. But this isn't just market resistance, it's also deliberate resistance. Because the United States isn't just watching COMAC, it's actively containing it. Washington sees COMAC through the lens of national security and technological supremacy, and it's acting accordingly. American suppliers, GE, Honeywell, Parker Aerospace, are facing export restrictions on what they can ship to China. Each part, each subsystem, each avionics chip is now a geopolitical chess piece. And FAA certification, it's been weaponized. What used to be a technical checklist has become a foreign policy tool. Delays aren't just bureaucratic, they're strategic. By denying certification, the US keeps COMAC grounded and protects Boeing's international turf. So while COMAC builds airframes, Washington builds roadblocks, and the skies grow more political with every certification delay. But across the Atlantic, the winds shift more subtly. The battle isn't loud, it's quiet. It's not open warfare, it's silent positioning. Because, unlike the US, Europe doesn't need to fight COMAC head-on, when bureaucracy can do the job in silence. Europe's response to COMAC's rise is a masterclass in calibrated restraint. No outrage, no sweeping bans, just a slow, quiet freeze. ESA and China's CAAC signed cooperation agreements years ago, but real certification progress? It's been glacial. Months stretch into years. Timelines blur. Nothing moves. Not because it can't, but because it shouldn't. Yet. Meanwhile, European aerospace giants like Safran and Liebherr are already threading through COMAC's supply lines, landing gear, avionics, subsystems, vital tech with European fingerprints. But no press releases, no bold declarations, just discrete transactions buried under layers of legal grey. It's the EU's specialty, economic engagement with political deniability. Play both sides, sell the parts, stall the paperwork. And all the while, EU regulatory delays conveniently protect Airbus's turf without a single word of overt rejection. It's protectionism cloaked in bureaucracy. But outside the West's fortified walls, another theatre is opening, one where COMAC's ambitions are quietly taking root, the developing world. In Latin America, Africa, and parts of Southeast Asia, government-owned airlines see the Chinese offer as irresistible. COMAC aircraft arrive bundled with infrastructure deals, state loans, and training programs, all financed by Chinese state banks. To nations starved of capital, that's not a plane. It's a full aviation ecosystem in a box. From Zambia to Bolivia, interest is rising. But it's not yet commitment. Airlines want more than low prices. They want dependability, service, and support. Many remember how Russian jets like the Sukhoi Superjet flopped due to patchy after-sales and weak global networks. COMAC knows this, and it's racing to prove it's not just the cheapest, but the most reliable alternative to Western giants. Ironically, the countries closest to China are the ones keeping their distance. South Korea's rejection of the C919 wasn't just a business call, it was a political signal. Korean Air didn't just say no, it said not even close. Japan's stance is even colder. Burned by the collapse of its own spacejet program and wary of China's strategic intentions, Tokyo has no interest in outsourcing its skies. Both Seoul and Tokyo are doubling down on technical transparency, Western certifications, and trusted alliances. Their message to COMAC? Come back when the world trusts you, not before. Even with geographic proximity, regional politics and security pacts with the US leave COMAC locked out of Asia's most advanced aviation markets. Proximity means nothing when trust is absent. And that brings us to the core of COMAC's uphill war. Because the real obstacle isn't technology, it's trust. COMAC's aircraft may fly fine, but in aviation, fine doesn't cut it. Safety isn't just numbers, it's reputation. It's a track record. And that's something you can't manufacture in a lab or subsidize through loans. Boeing and Airbus didn't become global leaders by just building jets. They built ecosystems, global maintenance networks, training pipelines, trusted certification liaisons, leasing partnerships, and political goodwill spanning generations. COMAC is starting from zero. And for every technical milestone it achieves, a dozen political or reputational hurdles still stand in its path. Until global buyers, regulators, and financiers believe in COMAC's reliability, the dream of a triopoly remains grounded. But here's the twist. China doesn't stop. It doesn't back down. And in a world where supply chains are fracturing and geopolitical alliances are shifting, even the longest runway eventually leads to takeoff. COMAC isn't there yet, but it's taxiing. The next decade will decide whether it soars or stalls.